Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Stephanie.
I'm Tom.
Hey, it's our science unit. And today we're going to be talking about the periodic table like we did in our earlier program because we're now on day 2. So we're in Unit 15 and our title was, it's elementary, the story behind the periodic table. We're going to be talking about these chemical elements. So those of you out there that love chemistry are really probably just going to be reviewing stuff. Some of these things, of course, I learned long ago, but I've forgotten a lot of stuff. And I must admit, when I was studying these chemical elements, there might have been a gallium, but it wasn't used in cell phones. But now we know it's an ingredient we have to have if we have smartphones. So we're going to learn about how some of these elements are quite plentiful. There's lots of them around the earth, and some are a little bit more rare. So we've got, today we're going to be talking about a new sort of periodic table that actually helps us understand how much of a particular element there is, or at least that we've found. I think it's funny that we think we found everything, guys, but we haven't. We might discover some more of these rare elements. So don't get excited yet. Don't get too nervous about life. We'll be okay. Right now, though, Tom, I think it's my turn to read through this. Is there anything you wanted to add?
No, I was just thinking of some of the elements themselves, but we'll talk about that as our lesson continues. So, yeah, I think you should go ahead and take over and read the entire contents of our lesson right now.
Recently, scientists have found a new use for Mendeleev's table. In 2019, the European Chemical Society put forward a new version of the table that presents the 90 elements that occur in nature according to their available reserves. Laid out across an oblong manipulation of the original table, each element cell is sized according to its abundance in nature. Elements with a plentiful supply, such as hydrogen and oxygen, appear in swollen green boxes. Smaller cells in orange and red, meanwhile, indicate vulnerability. Red being used for elements whose readily accessible natural reserves may become depleted within the next 100 years. While many endangered elements may not disappear entirely, global shortages could have grave consequences. Helium, which is shaded red in the table, is indispensable for the operation of key medical equipment. Without gallium, we may also no longer be able to harness solar energy. Another feature of the table shows how continued exploitation of key materials will hit us all closer to home. 31 of the table cells carry a smartphone symbol, indicating that these elements are currently used in our handheld devices. At current rates of consumption, the devices that we have come to rely on to communicate, socialize, and network have become their own endangered species. That being said, contemporary study of the elements is not entirely centered around questions of sustainability. A new periodic table under development by scientists at Moscow's Skolkovo Institute of Science and Technology suggests that some elements are still yet to be discovered. Nevertheless, we must remember that these essential building blocks are not infinite. We must therefore work to understand how humanity consumes these elements and how we can conserve them.
Okay, today, again, we're talking about the story behind the periodic table. And, of course, this table has existed for over 100 years. maybe coming up on 200 years eventually, but you may be wondering, gee, haven't they been able to come up with a different kind of chart? Is this the only one we have? I understand there are other charts, and these charts can be used in different ways. So let's talk about how the chart has changed over time. So recently, scientists have found a new use for Mendeleev's table. And in the year 2019, the European Chemical Society put forward a new version of the table that presents the 90 elements that occur in nature according to their available reserves. So that is providing us with some new information here. We've got the phrase to put forward something. This is a two-word verb phrase, and it can be separated. You could say to put something forward or to put forward something. Both are acceptable. So here they're going to put a new version of the table forward, or they're going to put forward a new version of the table. In other words, they're going to publish it, they're going to present it, and they're going to encourage people to use it.
Yeah, you could say suggest. If you put forward an idea, you're suggesting an idea that you hope people will take up and use. So they're putting forward a new version of the table, and it presents the 90 elements that occur in nature according to their available reserves. So they're actually in an order based on how plentiful or how much of that particular element is, or that we've found already. I'm sure we haven't found everything. So they're going to lay out these elements with sort of an oblong manipulation of the original table. Oblong is a word we use to describe a particular shape. If it's oblong, I would say it's kind of like a rectangle, a long rectangle, and it's kind of pulled from side to side. So it's elongated, it's pulled, oblong. Rectangle, and it's a manipulation of the original table. When you manipulate something, you modify it or change it in some way. So now each element cell is sized according to its abundance in nature. Now, the original table had all the boxes or all the cells. We're calling them cells. They're just boxes. On the chart, they were all the same size, right? But now those boxes or cells, their size is going to change based on how abundant they are in nature, how much of that particular element we found to date.
This sort of reminds me of those maps based on population.
Oh, yeah.
If you see a map of the United States, for example, it just shows the United States as it would look from space. But if they make that map according to population, then big states like Wyoming and Montana and Idaho would look really, really small. And then states like New Jersey and New York and Texas and California would look really, really big because they're based on population. So that's similar here. They're making a table of the elements that reflects the amount of elements in nature. Like, for example, hydrogen is the most abundant element in nature, at least in the universe, although it is not very common on the Earth here. If you want to get hydrogen here, you have to break apart water molecules because most hydrogen is bonded to oxygen atoms to make water molecules.
Cool. So these elements that are plentiful, and they're giving examples like hydrogen that Tom was just talking about, and oxygen, they appear in swollen green boxes. Swollen is the past participle of the verb swell. To swell means to puff up, to get bigger. So it's swollen, so it's a bigger box or bigger cell than normal because there's more to be found of oxygen and hydrogen in the earth. So we've got smaller cells, and they're colored orange and red. You can imagine red, for foreigners at least, mean emergency or danger. Whereas in Taiwan, it's good, it's happy. But remember, these are foreigners who came up with this periodic table. So red is danger sign. Orange is not quite as bad. It's moving towards that color red. So those that are in smaller cells that are either orange or red, they indicate vulnerability. If something's vulnerable, it just means it's able to be hurt. Or somehow it's able to be destroyed. So things that are vulnerable in our society would include young children, older adults, glass, things that can be destroyed or hurt. And we always talk about little kids and the elderly as being a vulnerable part of our population. Well, these particular elements indicate they're also vulnerable. Their vulnerability is because there just isn't as much of that element found so far, and we need more of it. I'm sure we'll discover more, but they're using these colors, orange and red, to let us know, hey, don't be using these needlessly, or don't use too much, or be careful, because we're running a little lower on these particular elements. So we're using those colors.
Right, and we're saying that they are readily accessible. If something's accessible, that means you can get it very easily. So if it's readily accessible, you can get it really quickly. But unfortunately, it may become depleted as a result of that. To deplete something means to basically run out of something. You could say you feel depleted.
Yeah.
Boy, I've been working hard all day. It was a 12-hour day, and we were trying to meet a deadline. Oh, I feel so depleted. I've run out of energy.
Yeah, I'm exhausted because you've used up all your energy. So again, they're using these colors to let people know, yes, we do have plenty of these particular elements, but because we use so much, they may become depleted within the next 100 years. Right now, guys, we're going to listen to our Chinese teacher who will explain a bit more, and then we'll be back to continue talking about some new periodic tables for these elements.
各位同学，我是 Patrick 派老师。我们今天要讲解的课程是5月份杂志 Unit15 It's Elementary, The Story Behind the Periodic Table 化学老师没告诉你的周期表故事。今天讲解的是文章第2天的部分，在这里我们聚焦在欧洲化学会 European Chemical Society 2019年出版的欧洲化学会周期表。这张周期表包含地球上存在的90种天然元素，依照存量取对数 log 之后呢所绘制的。那元素所占的面积越小，代表在自然界当中的存量也就越少，借此希望大众社会可以更加的重视有限的资源，那也多多的再利用。那请同学看到 In 2019 the European Chemical Society 这个句子，那请同学把 put forward 这个动词片语画起来。Put forward 这个动词片语是提出的意思。老师再给大家一个例句作为补充。Everyone can put forward a suggestion at the meeting.每个人在开会的时候都可以提出自己的建议。Everyone can put forward a suggestion at the meeting. 接下来，请同学特别的注意到，就是 reserves 这个词，请把它画起来。Reserves 呢，其实是蕴藏量的意思。老师想要补充一个名词片语，请大家记起来 ，oil reserves， 就是我们所讲的石油蕴藏量。接下来我们看到第2段第1句当中的 abundance， 在这里呢是含量的意思，那是 quantity 或者 amount 的同义词。不过更常见的字义是在 an abundance of 这个片语当中，它表示大量的。老师给大家一个例句做说明 ：This national park boasts an abundance of wildlife. This national park boasts an abundance of wildlife.这座国家公园有大量的野生动物栖息。那请注意 abundant 有一个同义词，就是 plentiful， plentiful， 在后面呢其实就可以看到这个单字 elements with a plentiful supply。 那请同学呢把 plentiful 画起来。接下来请同学看到 smaller cells in orange and red 这个句子，请同学特别注意，这其实是个分词构句。由于呢 smaller cells 是前面这个子句的主词，那跟后面的这个 red 红色其实是2个 不同的主词，所以后面 red being used， 这个 red 后面呢 red 主词要保留，那后面呢这个 being 这是属于分词构句的部分。这里的意思是说，红色所标示的元素在自然界当中便于取得的存量。接下来请同学把 deplete 画起来。 deplete 呢表示资源或供应耗尽了。举例来说， The rainfall has been low in recent months. The reservoirs are nearly depleted. 那最近的雨量降雨这几个月有点少，所以水库呢水都快要干了。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Okay, let's continue with our story, or at least our lesson for today. We're talking about the new chart put forward by the European Chemical Society. It's kind of a new version of the table, of the periodic table of the elements. And this particular new version is trying to tell us how much of these elements there are. Whereas the old chart just had these squares that were all the same size, this new chart will size the elements according to their availability in nature, and it will also indicate if some are plentiful or if some are about to be depleted in the future. Now, here in the third paragraph, it says, while many endangered elements may not disappear entirely, global shortages could have grave consequences. So, yes, some of these elements may not totally disappear, but if we have a shortage of those elements, then they could be, or we could be in really big trouble. There is a problem of these elements called the rare earths, I believe, that China used to sell to the rest of the world, but then they stopped selling them. And we need those chemicals in our modern devices, so now we have to get them someplace else. And they're kind of rare, so if we run out of those rare earths, my goodness, how are we going to be able to play video games on our smartphones when we're riding the bus home after work every day?
Oh, no. What will we do if we can't play video games, especially on our phone?
What a tragedy.
I know. Anyway, we've got some endangered elements. So we talked about helium, how it's shaded red. That means it's really important for our use, but we're perhaps getting a little short on helium. And also it says without gallium, remember, that's one of the newer elements, we may also no longer be able to harness solar energy. If you harness something, it's like you're able to suddenly control it. Harness solar energy, use that sun's power to actually produce electricity.
Yeah, we often use that word harness to talk about forms of energy. So, yes, if you don't have gallium, then solar energy might be affected. I guess it's probably used in solar panels and stuff like that. Now, moving on to the fourth paragraph here, it says, another feature of the table, again, this is the table that's put forward by the European Chemical Society. Another feature of this table shows how continued exploitation or use of key materials will hit us all closer to home. If something hits home or hits us close to home, that means it affects us personally. A lot of times we hear about these problems where we think, that'll just affect poor people in India or whatever. It's not going to affect us. But this is talking about things that will actually affect us closer to home. We may not be able to play those video games on our smartphones after all.
Right, so 31 of the table cells carry that smartphone symbol, and this indicates that these elements are currently used in our handheld devices, so we'll want to keep an eye on those. Now, at current rates of consumption, the devices that we come to rely on to communicate, socialize, and network have become their own endangered species. Consumption is a word we use to talk about how consumers use up things or use things. We consume things by eating them or by using something until it's gone. So you could consume gasoline if you have a car or a scooter. You could consume a lot of junk food if you're eating it. Consumption, of course, is the noun form of that verb to consume. And people who consume things are called consumers.
Exactly. Okay, so yeah, like I was saying, some of these elements, including rare earth elements, are used in our electronic devices, in our smartphones and our tablet computers and stuff like that. So yes, it will hit us close to home there. So we better start worrying about this, or we're going to have to go back to reading books and newspapers and stuff like that. Now, here in the final paragraph, it says, that being said, contemporary study of the elements is not entirely centered around questions of sustainability. So that being said, even though we've said that, we still have something else to say. Modern study of the elements is not totally centered around questions of sustainability. Sustainability is a word we often hear about modern society and of course, in relation to using elements and stuff like that, or excuse me, using resources. If something is sustainable, that means we can easily replace it. Like burning petroleum is not sustainable because once you burn it, it's gone. But supposedly using solar energy or wind power and stuff like that, that's sustainable because you can use it over and over again.
Now, we've got a new periodic table they're working on in Russia. Moscow is in Russia. And it's at a school called the Skolkovo Institute of Science and Technology, and they're focusing their efforts on elements that they think are still yet to be found or yet to be discovered. So they think there are still some elements out there that scientists can find or discover. That would be very exciting for scientists. Nevertheless, or even though that's true, we must remember that these essential building blocks, these are elements, are not infinite. If something's infinite, it's endless, it's limitless. It will exist forever and ever and ever. Will never run out.
Exactly. So again, this is another version of the periodic table of the elements. We did talk about the one that was put forward by the European Chemical Society there. Now we've got one coming out from scientists at Moscow's Skolkovo Institute of Science and Technology. I'm not very good at my Russian accent there. I wish I did. It's a pretty cute accent, actually. But again, these are Russians, and Russians are pretty good with chemicals. Remember, they developed the Tsar Bomba. That was the biggest hydrogen bomb at the time when it was exploded. Maybe 50 years ago or so. But in any case, they've come out with this new chart here, and they think that there are some elements that still need to be discovered. That's interesting, and that's probably possible. Chemists are working all the time to find new discoveries, and maybe they'll come up with some new elements that will save us all.
They're also working on how to help humanity consume these elements and better conserve them. Now, you know this word, conserve. Conserve means you're trying to protect something and not use too much of it. Maybe save up some so you don't use it all. We conserve different things that we're getting low on. Sometimes if you're out running, maybe you're running a marathon, you try to conserve your energy. You don't run as fast as you can at the start of the race. Then you would use up all your energy, but you conserve some. You hold back some of your energy so you can last for the entire race. Here we're trying to conserve the elements by not using them wastefully, especially, or overusing them. Sometimes, in order to conserve, you have to cut back and not use so much of something to protect it so you'll have some for the future.
Yeah, I remember when I was a kid, there was this thing called the Arab Oil Embargo because the Arab countries were mad at the United States for supporting Israel. Yeah. So they said, hey, we're not going to let you have our oil. So at the time, gasoline was kind of rare. It was kind of difficult to buy. And so we had to conserve energy, okay? We had to ride together in our car if we were going to go somewhere and not take separate trips and stuff like that. We needed to conserve energy. energy. And yeah, especially here in Taiwan during the summer when the electricity rates go up during the summer, we need to conserve energy, okay? So we cannot turn our air conditioners on all day long. We've got to turn them off at some point and go to a 7-Eleven or something, or go to the library and be cool there.
Yeah.
Or better yet, just get used to the hot weather. It's actually good for your health to let your body experience high temperatures and low temperatures at the same time. But that is not really the subject of today's lesson. We're mainly talking about the periodic table of the elements, and we're done with our discussion. We need to hear now from our Chinese teacher.
请同学看到第3段的重点。第3段呢是在讲某些元素短缺会造成严重后果，这边是以氦和镓为例。Global shortages could have 好，这里呢，请同学把后面的 grave consequences 画起来，会有严重后果。这里 grave 是形容词，严重的。接下来，请同学把 harness solar energy 画起来。harness 这是个动词，它是利用的意思。老师再给大家一个例句补充说明。Technology should be harnessed to solve problems. 我们应该要利用科技来解决问题。请同学看到第4段，欧洲化学学会的周期表还有另外一项特征，他们把手机制作原料会用到的元素，用智慧型手机符号在空格内表示出来。要借由这项民众高度依赖的电子产品，让我们感受到议题的严重程度。请同学看到 Another feature of the table shows how continued exploitation 这个句子，这个片语hit home 就是 hit 什么人 close to home， 它是表示某件事可以让我们感受很深，或说可以感受到切肤之痛。老师举个例句来说明 I was bullied as a kid, so my tears trickled down when my son told me that he gets teased at school. It just hits me so close to home. 我自己小时候被霸凌过，所以当我的小孩跟我说他在学校有人欺负他的时候呢，我的眼泪呢就掉下来了，因为我切肤之痛。好，第5段呢，最后总结提醒我们要记住，自然界当中的元素并不是无穷无尽的，我们应该要了解如何节约使用。那在这里呢，请同学把 that being said 画起来，这是很常见的片语，表示虽然这么说。那再来呢，请同学把下一句字最后 are still yet to be discovered 这里画起来。are still yet to be discovered 这表示未来，现在代替未来，就是现在还没被发现。be 动词 yet to 这样的句型其实很常用。我们有一个片语叫 the best yet to come 最好的还没发生。以上就是我们针对第2天课程内容所做的中文讲解，谢谢大家。
That's it, guys. We're out of time. We hope you learned a little bit more about our periodic table and how there are different forms and variations. And maybe you're one of those scientists out there that's going to be lucky and discover some new elements. Good luck. For English Digest, I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Tom. Goodbye.
See ya.